Good evening. What a great turnout. So many people coming out this evening. Oh, is it not on?
Yeah, it's on, but it's...
Mic's on, volume's down.
Test.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
We got the volume guy coming here.
All right. I just continue talking. Can we hear? We're okay? Okay, good evening, everybody, and welcome. Thank you so much for making the time this evening. We have a great turnout, so many people coming out. And so, yeah, we're looking forward to a good, engaged session. We've already had some just fantastic conversations already. So I want to start by acknowledging that the City of Brandon is located on Treaty 2 land, the unceded territory of the Dakota and the homeland of the Red River Métis. All right. So I just want to, because I have had some conversations with a few people already, acknowledge that there's lots going on right now in our city. There's lots going on in life generally. The cost of living is way up, and there's lots of different concerns. And so for you to come out this evening and have a conversation is definitely appreciated. We're looking forward to, having a respectful conversation. How it's going to go here is I'm going to share a lot of information, basically in summary of what the city plan is, and then at the end of it, we'll have time for some questions and answers. And there's two mics. Oh, there's one mic right in the center there as well, when the time comes. So I'm going to talk a little bit about why we're doing what we're doing, and then I'm going to get into what the summary, really, what the city plan is, what the overall vision is, and the three themes are growing, moving, and healthy, touch on next steps, and then of course we'll have some questions. So why are we doing this? We've received this question a few times, why are we doing this? At a bare minimum, we are doing this because we are required to by the province. We are required as a city to have a long-term plan for how we manage growth and change. So just at the very basic, we need some policies that address sort of the physical, the social, environmental, economic objectives. And so that's really why we're doing this. As we started this project, we could have done a super simple land use process that lasts a couple of weeks and it's just very basic, but we decided that we'll do some community engagement and really have an understanding of what the vision for the city is and have a more comprehensive document that's more than just sort of your base level land use plan that's only talking about development. So just providing a little bit of history and a why as to what we're doing. Some people have asked, don't we have a plan already? Haven't we had a plan in place? And you're right, we have had a plan in place, which is this one that's here on the screen, and which is, again, this is very typical of municipalities all across our nation to have a development plan. And so we have one that's in place. However, this plan was put in place with what's called a planning district. Now, fair warning, some of this presentation might be too planning-y and maybe a little bit boring, but there's some exciting too, so there's going to be a bit of a balance. So we were in a planning district, which is the City of Brandon and surrounding municipalities, and did planning together, had this document together. That planning district dissolved, doesn't exist anymore, so we have this very unique opportunity to come up with what our vision as just the City of Brandon is. And so there's questions also as to how exactly does this get done? Because, and some people have picked up a city plan document and you've read through it, and you can attest to the fact that it's very high level, right? So it's that overall vision, and how it gets done is the master plans, the strategy. So a very basic example could be that in the city plan we say, as the City of Brandon, affordable housing is very important to us and should be prioritized. So how does that get done? Is maybe we have an affordable housing strategy. If we talk about green space or recreation is important in terms of quality of life, how does it get done? We put together a master plan for recreation and green space and so forth. So that's just to help you understand at what level the city plan is. So to talk about finances and cost, there is no cost that's associated to the city plan. However, there are capital budgets that are associated to all of these, sort of master plan, strategic level plans. And if you have more questions, there is going to be a session coming up on April 8th at 6 p.m. that's very specifically in council chambers, specifically talking about finances. I believe it's called the financial plan, and it's a public hearing. If you want more information and you really wanted to get into the details about the finances and how our city runs and that kind of thing, please jot that down, April 8th at 6 p.m. council chambers, and then you can get into more of the cost side of things. So what is the vision? Let's get into some of the details of what the vision exactly is. As you've probably seen from the boards, it's categorized as we are a growing, moving, and healthy city, and I'll get into these in just a minute. So what does it mean to be a growing city? Why do we care about being a growing city? And we care because our city has changed in many ways. Right now, we're in a housing crisis. We have an aging population. We have under 2,000 immigrants coming in annually. Our demographics are changing. We have environmental considerations. We have so many stats that justify the reason for us changing how we do things, how we plan for our city. An example here, in this map here, 50% of our residentially zoned lands only permit a single detached house. However, we are seeing in the stats a reduction in the demand for single detached housing and a spike in the demand for multi-unit type of housing. So there's an obvious gap when the predominant residential zones don't permit, what the demand is. So we can see so many different gaps in the stats, and that is why we are proposing this change, which is that, being a growing city means that we care about what our neighborhoods look like, right? So for example, historically on the left side, sorry, I didn't change my slide. The left side shows the map for the previous development plan. So when I say development plan, I'm basically saying what we're calling right now is a city plan. It is a development plan. So the previous plan was quite, I guess, you can see that there's many colors, many separation of uses. We have the red is the commercial, the sort of the yellow is the residential, and we're changing from that to what you see on the right-hand side that has more of sort of that's more permissive. It's more permissive of different kinds of uses in all of our neighborhoods. So we care about what our neighborhoods look like. We want different kinds of uses in our neighborhoods. We want different kinds of housing in all neighborhoods because that reflects the stats, that reflects the people that we have in our city. So this is, what I'm sharing here is very summarized. A lot of the detail is in the boards that are shown around. So to talk about the cost, probably the largest cost of growing a city is infrastructure, right? And we do have sort of a 20-year capital plan that's for growth that talks about the cost of growth. And again, those details will be shared at this financial meeting that's coming up in a few weeks here. And this plan for growth really it's aligned with the growth strategy that's basically saying that we're growing to the south and to the center. And so it's important in the city plan, it's important to identify how and where we're growing. Because as you can appreciate, if the cost of infrastructure is so high and we just grow anywhere and everywhere, you can see that that's very inefficient, right? So it's important for us to identify how and where we are growing, and that can be found with the growth strategy as well as in the city plan. So again, there's various costs to this, but there's also some savings. If you can think about the increase in tax base that we experience when there's new development, right? And an increase in tax base, of course, benefits all of us. Some of the initiatives that are going on that sort of align with Growing City are, we recently, some of you may know, got some funding from the federal, well, we are getting some funding from the federal government, that's the Housing Accelerator Fund, and some of that will go to providing some housing incentives to increase housing in our city. There's currently some zoning bylaw updates going on, again, to further, to provide more housing in our city. And then, of course, this is some of the boring stuff, but an update to the zoning bylaw to align with the city plan. So we're moving on to what does it mean to be a healthy city? Why do we care about being a healthy city? So we care because you can see some of the stats here nationwide, again, where on the housing side of things. Being a healthy city needs more than just housing, and I'll get into that in a little bit. But thinking about housing as a right and what our responsibility is to provide various forms of housing, stats around homelessness, use of shelters, the need for green space and recreation. And of course the benefits of that, physical and mental health. With rising costs, the need for financial responsibility. There's many aspects of being a healthy city. Environmental responsibility as well. So what the vision really is that we would provide more housing options. So if you can think about, some of you may know about the housing continuum. There's, right on the left there is homelessness, and on the right is home ownership. So then we have a responsibility to ensure that we have various types of housing in our city to cater for the various types of needs that we have in our city. As well, it's important that we're socially healthy, environmentally healthy, and economically healthy. Some of the initiatives going on, some of the successes, and now again, this is very heavy on the housing part, but we have a sobering center that was just approved on the north side, transitional housing as well. There's a few projects for affordable housing that have been approved in various parts of the city. So it's important to note that there's a lot of the initiatives that are in the city plan that are already happening, which shouldn't be surprising because we have a lot of master plans and strategies that already exist, are already adopted by council. So there's a lot of good work that's already going on. And so what the city plan does is that it brings all of that into alignment. So it's not new, it's existing. And so we're just continuing what's going on and bringing some alignment. So the why of moving city, why do we care? And I've had some conversations already with people about why should we even provide bike paths? So to just outline that this is not about getting rid of the vehicle. We cannot get rid of the vehicle, nor do we intend to get rid of the vehicle. It will continue to be probably the predominant way of getting around. What this is about is providing more options for people. Right? We do know that there's people that are getting around our city in many ways, and we were talking just previously about the costs. Costs are going up, so we have a responsibility to provide different movement choices for residents. No one's getting rid of the car, we're just providing multiple options for people to get around. And so some of the feedback that we've heard, we've been engaging with people for the last 2 years on the city plan. And we've heard feedback that residents are very proud of our trails, and they get a lot of use. So you can see the citywide loop. For anyone that hasn't rode it, please make sure as spring and summer comes to go around the city and enjoy the trails. One thing that we're not good at is connecting, right? Commuting. For the people, and I see many of you in here that are cyclists, to get into and through the city, we don't have those safe routes. And so then there comes our responsibility then to provide some form of active transportation networks, more connectivity within the city. And so again, here there's some pictures that are showing you that moving city is not just about cycling. It's about transit. It's about walking. It's about all the other ways to get around. Vehicles. So you may be aware of some of the initiatives going on. There's this section here, Sam is talking about Vision Zero. There's been some sort of traffic calming initiatives all over the city so far, and I know some people have been engaged in that. So it's important as we talk about providing different movement choices for our residents to consider what safety looks like, right? So that's where that road safety, that's where that Vision Zero piece comes. Active transportation, we're going to get into a little bit here about 26th Street. And then there's some conversation with council currently about making transit more efficient. There's probably going to be more coming on that later. So 26th Street, sorry, I want to back up here a little bit. The map on the right basically shows potential links, missing links in the city. And this is not something that's new. In 2015, there was a green space master plan where a lot of these links were identified. And 26th Street is seen kind of as a quick win. The reason for that is already 26th Street was on the schedule to be reconstructed. And hence now the conversations come up that if it's a missing link and it's being scheduled this year for reconstruction, why wouldn't we start to have the conversation with residents about what would it look like to have a bike lane on 26th Street, and then connect onto the multi-use path on Victoria and then 34th, and eventually connect to the south as well. So there's been some conversations about, it feels disconnected when I get to park, where do I go? And it may feel a bit, we can't do it all in one day, right? It's going to be little pieces that eventually lead into an active transportation network. And so some of you may have had conversations already with the staff about what the different options are, and we really appreciate the feedback. We're in no way saying that this is something that's final and this is what's happening. The whole point of engagement sessions like this is to understand what the implications are. With these changes in how we do things, there's always kind of those sacrifices that have to be made, but who better to inform that than you residents that are experiencing this, right? So there's been some discussions about, do you get rid of a travel lane? Do you get rid of a parking lane? And so forth, and it's just really good feedback, and we appreciate that. I believe there's one option that's missing here, but we can get into that maybe during the questions if people have questions about that. So overall, where we are right now in the timeline is that we're engaging residents on the city plan overall and on some of these initiatives. And then we would get the feedback and get back to council to say, this is what we're hearing from people. This is what we're hearing, and then from then we'll start the formal process for 26th Street. After today, we would get your feedback, we'll report back to council as to what we're hearing. There'll probably be a deliberation on what the different options are and how to move forward, and then we'll report that back to you as residents. So this is pretty much the end of the slide. One thing I did want to mention is you may be wondering how you give feedback on the city plan, and many people have picked up a document in the front. You can go to our location on Princess Street and pick up a document. You can email cityplan@brandon.ca with comments on the city plan, and we'll be able to incorporate your comments in that way. For 26th Street as well, you can speak to staff here, or you can go online, brandon.ca/cityplan. There's a form there that you can pick and fill in which option is your preferred. You can even add your comments in there as well. So perhaps I'll leave it here for now and open it up to questions. Did I miss anything?
Nope, it's good.
So if you have a question, please feel free to come to the mic and we will.
Yeah.
I got one question. I was reading in the newspaper that you're proposing to changes to the zoning bylaw that require one.
I got this.
You're proposing changes to the zoning bylaw, I guess, to meet the city plan. And one of the changes that I was interested in is the fact that you're looking at you're changing your parking requirements to 1 parking spot per 2 residential apartment units. So a fellow builds a 12-unit apartment block, and he's only got 6 units to park in, because most developers only go to the minimum. I've been in the business for 39 years, and I'm sure of that. Anyway, you go to the minimum, and so in other words, a fellow wants to rent an apartment there and finds the 6 units are already taken with respect to planning. What do you do with your car that you may have? You either sell it on the street. If you park it on the street, you got problems with vandalism or all kinds of situations, that snow clearing, everything that's happening in this particular type of city. So I'm just wondering if you could tell me what's your rationale in cutting parking spaces from 1.5 units per apartment down to 1 per 2 apartments, which is, to me, an impossible thing. And you remember, there's no visitor parking anymore either. So that's one of my questions. I think just a general observation is, as you squeeze people together more and more, you're going to require, there is problems with respect to that. And in the long run, you're going to require more police and more social services all around this city in order to maintain a peaceful situation. So, what's your ideas with respect to parking?
Thanks, Terry. I'm Ryan. I'm the Director of Planning and Buildings, if you didn't know. And the person who's bringing forward some of these discussions around parking and housing in the community.
Can't hear you.
Usually I'm not too quiet, but I'll try to speak a little louder. So did you hear the part that I'm Ryan? Okay, that's my name.
Ryan.
Good start. So the item around parking and housing is something that's being brought forward for consideration of council. So Sonic-Healy presented here the change in demand for housing in our community. Housing costs are going up. The cost of borrowing is going up. The demand for housing options is increasing. The stats over the last 10 years in housing in our community shows that. So we, as a community, need to look at how we can change our rules to provide more options for people in our community. When we're talking about parking, we're not talking that there's not going to be a demand for parking. There is. At a national level, the recommendations coming down are that parking is eliminated as a requirement or reduced. That doesn't mean that parking's not required. Parking will be provided and people will have a demand for parking. What's being proposed by staff, recommended, is 3 different options for council around parking. The one option is kind of on the polar end. You have no parking required and the market provides, which to some extent happens already for a lot of commercial development in the city. We have some minimums, but ultimately the folks who are operating businesses know how much parking is needed for their business to operate. On the residential side, Terry, what is being proposed is 1 space per unit. There's a reduction for small units, so maybe that's what you're referring to, like 0.5 for like a small 1-bedroom unit. But the recommendation from staff is for 1 space per unit as a minimum. That's the same as what's required for a detached house right now in the city and has been required for many, many years. It's just requiring the same amount of parking for someone living in a multi-unit, for someone developing a multi-unit building as it is a single detached house. I suspect there will be developments that provide more parking because there will be a market for people who do have more cars, like you talked about, and extra parking will be provided. I suspect there will be some developments that provide the minimum as you brought forward. The goal here is to provide flexibility to the industry so we can provide housing options for our residents.
It seems to me that if you're making parking a creature of the developer providing it, he will maybe provide it at an increased cost to the resident, which means you're going from your cheaper accommodations to a more expensive situation because somebody wants to park their car, and it's not required in the zoning bylaw. So anyway, I hope that you come out with some kind of detail description of this sort of thing because, you know, let's face it, all we can read is what's in the newspaper at this point in time. And so your details are, I think, are where the action is, and they should be made known to the public before you expect people to answer your questions or consider your changes. So anyway, thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, David. Good point about the public.
So I'm actually going to speak to that was made. I'm Sean Wood. I'm the Executive Director for the Construction Association. I just want to clarify, because a comment was made that developers will charge extra. The city is proposing the 1 parking spot as a minimum. Remember, that's a minimum. The industry is actually asking that they remove the parking minimum because our developers know what they need to be able to rent the apartments. So we have developments in town now that actually exceed what the policy is now at 1.5 parking spots, and we're actually putting more in for those developments than what's allocated now, and that won't change moving forward. Thanks.
I would like to say that I like the idea of higher density and affordable housing. I live in a house built in 1939. On one side, I have a fourplex with lovely neighbors who always like to look at my garden. Fourplex. And then on the other side, I have a duplex that was built maybe 6 years ago with two brothers who share the backyard. So I like my neighborhood a lot. The gentleman across the street can tell you the history of everybody who's lived on my street for a long time. He's been there probably since 1939 as well. So I do like the idea of welcoming neighbors. And I also like the idea of the fourplex people parking in front of my house. It makes me feel secure. And if I'm not there in my driveway, no one else knows if that's my car or someone else's. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a long walk staring at you guys. If you don't know, I'm Rick. I talk a lot of stuff, and I've been not really trying to spearhead this at all. I just have a great concern for my kids' well-being and the affordability. My biggest take from this is that we all of you just mentioned that we're trying to make housing affordable, right? So, from what I gathered from second last city council meeting, okay, and I'll take one little excerpt out of there, where right at the end of the meeting, Sean, I believe was the gentleman, one of the councillors, asked about an apartment building on 26th Street that hadn't had their snow cleared all year long. Now my best friend over there in the back corner, Mr. Ron Bowles. Hey Ron, how you doing? What does anybody remember what his answer was? Sorry, no, we're not going to clean your sidewalk. I know that you guys are looking into it for the next year, and I know that you guys have discussed about reducing sidewalk clearing as it is and having residents clean their own sidewalks. I know it didn't. I don't know if it went through or not, or what, or if it's still in the discussions. I'm not sure. My concern is for people's well-being and affordability. If you want to spend money, have something come back from that. We don't need to spend money. I get it, everybody would like a bike path and walking path and all that kind of stuff. I get it. Right now, we have an infrastructure that we cannot take care of. He just admitted in a council meeting we're not cleaning sidewalks. Not only are we in Manitoba, if none of you have figured that out, I don't know how many people just moved here, but this is a mild winter. We've been very fortunate. We haven't had much snowfall this year. And just to do that same point, but we can't clean an apartment building's sidewalk in front of their house. On 26th Street, where you guys are proposing to add bike paths. I don't know how many of you walked here today or bicycled here today. So out of 100 people, we got 3. So 4. So in the middle of winter, the usefulness of additional bike paths that we can't take care of financially, to me doesn't make any sense. Because we all know, you talk about, oh, it's not going to cost us any money. Do you actually believe that? Do you think that there's no upkeep for the next 30 years? Well, I did a little bit of research. Do you guys have any clue, even a ballpark figure, over the next 30 years, what it would cost per kilometer for a bike path? We're in the hundreds of millions of dollars. So I don't understand where you think that we're getting the money from. We blew our budget for snow clearing last year. We were off by 10%. We budgeted 700,000. We were short 70 grand. This year we increased our snow clearing budget to 900 and change. Did you account for the carbon tax? Did you account for the increase in gas prices? I guarantee you that we won't make that snow clearing budget again. I'd like to know if we've ever made our snow clearing budget. But until we can take care of what we own, we can't be spending stuff on vanity projects. Aren't there 2 sidewalks on 26th Street already? On both sides of the street? So you want to spend more money? Do you want to clear the sidewalk for the bicyclists? I know the bicyclist says you can't do it, it's against the law. Change the law in our city that bicyclists can ride on the sidewalk. There isn't that much traffic on our sidewalks or streets, walking or bicycling. I get it, people want to do it for entertainment, but for the actual working man, time is money. Not everybody works 5 minutes from home. All the Maple Leaf people, what, are they going to start biking and walking to work? Like, I'm just trying to bring common sense and the whole aspect of wasteful spending by the government. Timing is everything. Right now, in this time, we have carbon tax coming again. We have carbon tax coming back in June. We have minimum wages going up to $15.80 in October. Like, everything that's cheap is getting more expensive. Like, now you want to buy a home? Well, the reason why people are buying multi-family homes, because they can't afford a single dwelling. Not once have I heard the city of tax saving. Not once have I heard the city of how to make money. Actually, I love this guy, Sean. I talked to him all night. We had a civil, common sense conversation. And he brought up one of the biggest things. We can talk about all sorts of stuff. Electrical infrastructure, we don't have it. We don't even have enough to have a commercial building come here. We're going to have to light that coal plant up again to generate enough power to add more facilities. Why don't we spend the money instead of bike paths, which generate no money but only cause a deficit, where we have existing sidewalks that we could manipulate or make that a designated street, and putting a bike path, and you're saying you're trying to protect bicyclists, and then you put them on a busy street. That is the most Hippocratic thing that you said the whole time, is that you're trying to make it safe for bicyclists, but then you put them on a street, and then if you take up a lane, now you're making that street more congested. So it makes it then more dangerous. Pick another street. But do you think that the city has enough money right now to afford this? And what are we forced to do because of the zero, whatever? What are we doing? Zero target zero, or whatever it is? What's the program that we're signed up for? Net zero, right? I know it's a federal program. It's not whatever. And that is our goal, right? So our goal is net zero, which is a federal plan, which you are forced to abide by because you're probably going to take some of their money, right? Like, I don't know, like, my other question is, who's making those decisions and who's recommending a small town like Brandon to try and do the same thing as big cities in a climate that we have here? Your electric bikes, your walking paths, your bicycling, your walking everywhere works great in a better climate. But for us as society to spend that money on the amount of time that we're going to be able to take advantage of it makes absolutely no sense. Like, I'm still waiting for common sense. The most common sense I've heard this evening is that of Sean. Invest money at the airport. Bring in an Amazon distribution center. Bring in a UPS distribution center. That's our property. That generates cash flow. That then reduces the amount of taxes that we have to charge our citizens. That then reduces the cost of living. But adding a bike path adds taxes. We can't dispute that. It is always an addition of money. So how much more money do you want us to spend? I'm not saying cancel the whole thing. Maybe we need to do a little reassessment of our city and say, hey, do you want, maybe we need to take a pause, a step back, and save a little bit of cash. And then when we have a pool of money to throw around like candy floss, then we maybe vote on it. Maybe we decide where we're going to spend the money. But from what I heard, nobody is being accountable for why we are doing this and what we're doing. Now we're just getting to think, well, this is what we're told by the net zero idea, and this is where we have to go to. Well, it might work in Toronto, but I don't think the same ideas work in Manitoba. Oh, 100%, buddy. He just stood up 2 seconds ago. Thank you. Yeah. You're awesome. You're the man. Hey, no, I'm not shaking your head, buddy. Sorry. You disrespected me on the news, and that's it. Anyways, thank you very much for the time. I appreciate it. And all I'm looking out for is the future of society and the cost of living, because it's become ridiculous.
Hello, I would like, my name is David Barnes. I would like to suggest that given that climate change is a real phenomenon, and in fact the ecological crisis and the climate crisis are now combining into what may more properly be called a catastrophe, and many scientists now speak of Earth systems collapsing. These include much more than climate. These include glaciers, ocean circulation currents. They include economics of the world. They also include political systems around the world, which are suffering badly from stresses that have been incorporated into them for a long time. And so I would like to respond to Rick's commentary by saying that a community like ours is going to profit most handsomely when citizens such as myself and perhaps Rick and others would willingly form networks of, for example, snow shovelers. If I had been on anywhere near 26th Street and I had read that same commentary about someone not getting their snow cleared, I would have grabbed two friends and been over there immediately clearing snow. I think that's something that we owe to each other in this time in the world. We owe allegiances to other people and their lives, and we need to unite ourselves and come together in actions to promote safety and security, and not simply download our costs onto our government, who are obviously and clearly struggling. So that's one comment I would like to make. The second comment that I was about to make was just, could we willingly ask ourselves to limit our questions to something like 3 minutes? Would that be reasonable? 2 minutes? Because I think if we did, we'd have a more civil meeting. Thank you.
So if I can just have a really brief response to Rick. And my name's Mark Allard. I'm the General Manager of the Health and Services. Part of my responsibility is the engineering and the discussions that we're having on 26th Street and the bike lane. And I think the fact of the matter is that when we consider the design of 26th Street and the construction of 26th Street, the amount of pavement or the total width of pavement that we will build, including a bike lane, will generally not drive up the cost. We have today 3 lanes on 26th Street in each direction. The concept is to design 2 lanes, one for potentially parking, one for travel, or 2 lanes for travel without parking. And the existing parking lane that's there today would be converted into a bike lane. Now, some of the additional costs is associated to the operations of it. It depends on where and how you construct that pathway, and we've got several scenarios that we're proposing as options, where if you do have a protected bike lane with some sort of a median or that type of stuff, chances are that you're have some snow clearing challenges, but it's all about how it's designed, keeping in mind the type of equipment that you're going to use for maintenance. But there is also that option where the existing equipment that we have today can also accommodate snow clearing with some of the options that we present there. So, not sure where you got your numbers there from, Rick, but we could actually have a little conversation afterwards. I'd love to find out a little bit more information on where you got your information. But anyway, thank you for that.
If you say that you built a bike path from scratch, just like you have on 34th, right? Like you have your own path there built on its own.
Fair enough.
So anyway, I based it on 4-foot wide path, blah, blah, blah. Government standards built a little bit extra because of our climate. So, and I adjusted for time and snowfall over 30 years.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I appreciate that. And happy to have some conversations over there afterward.
Like I said, I'm all about the numbers.
Okay.
I'd love to see, I haven't heard an estimate yet on what any of this
Okay.
is gonna cost.
Excellent. Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, thanks for that, first of all, because that was going to be one of my questions was, would it actually cost more money to build a bike path than to pave all the car lanes? And I suspected it would not be. So thanks very much. Because I also have an affordability concern, and I know after years and years and years, decades of driving a car, that sort of driving a car is not sort of a freedom that we have, because there's nothing free about driving a car. And that I might have ridden a bike here today, but there's no safe way to get here by bicycle. But if there was a way to get here by bicycle safely, then I would be able to buy a bike on eBrandon for $100 or $200, and I would be able to drive here. So as someone who lives next street over from 26th Street, I'm thrilled that we're going to have options of different ways that we can get around the city. This is going to be a game changer for me and how much I'm able to ride my bike to do things that I want to do. Walking's free, riding a bike once you got the bike is free. It's going to make my life more affordable. And I say that from a position of some privilege because I can actually afford to buy a car too. And there are people I know in the city that can't afford to buy cars. So by spending no more money, as you say, we're going to be helping to create a transportation system there that makes transportation possible to more people in Brandon. That makes us a freer city and a better city and a more just city and also a healthier city in terms of people's physical health and in terms of the climate. So just say well done to the city planners for thinking this through about options that we've got. Well done.
All right, hi everybody. My name is Grant Hamilton. I was hit by a car while biking about 1.5 years ago. And so for me, a bike lane on 26th Street is I mean, biking on the sidewalk wouldn't have helped me. It wouldn't have made me any safer. But a separated bike lane like what you're proposing for 26th Street, it looks like exactly the kind of thing that would encourage more people to bike more often. And I like Quentin, I would have biked here today, but I chose to walk instead. And if you think the potholes are bad on the street, if you think the streets are in bad condition, you should try the sidewalks. The problem with the sidewalks, especially on 18th Street, it's no more fun in the summer. Even if the sidewalk's in perfect condition, you got lots of traffic, lots of parking. And then when I got here, I came in off the street and the doors were locked, so I had to go all the way around on the outside again through a parking lot empty, full of like no cars. So it's not exactly a paradise to bike or walk in Brandon, although we take it for granted that you can drive anywhere you want to go. So I really commend the city for taking some time in this city plan and saying we want more options for people. We've kind of built a lot for cars, and we have the ability to go anywhere we want in our car. That's fantastic. I drive a lot of places, and just being able to say in the future we want to be able to go more places with more options, that's great. I also have a question, believe it or not. I commend the city for all of the work that you've done over the past 2 years, doing these public engagement sessions, being really open, really transparent. I remember, Sonakila, you came to the university about 2 years ago, 1.5 years ago, like a long session, open to all our questions and comments. There's been public feedback all the way along. That's fantastic. I look at a 30-year plan and I think back 30 years. I mean, I was in high school. I was in Dave Barnes' class 30 years ago. And 30 years from now, we're going to be in a very different world. What kind of mechanisms are built into the plan to ensure that this type of public engagement, which seems really popular, continues going forward, that over the next 30 years, when we look at the day-to-day, the month-to-month, the year-to-year, that we align what we're doing with the plan, and that as things change, we continue to update the plan. I'd just like to hear what that process might look like.
Thanks, Grant, for the question about engaging folks. And I think an effective city plan or effective plan in any discipline involves ongoing engagement. So when we're talking about the plan, having it wrapped up, it's really never wrapping up. it's ongoing forever. So as we go through initiatives like we're talking about 26th Street and lots of different perspectives, and that's good and healthy, we're hoping to have these continual conversations around other really tough community topics. Because the city, as Grant said, 30 years ago doesn't look like the city of today, and it's sure not going to look like the city that we're planning for 30 years in the future. The next person up.
Hi, my name is Tara Stokes. This normally isn't my thing, but I'm just a little bit concerned with the school zone, having children that attend J.R. Reid School there. So I'm not sure if any of you can speak to it, but I just do have concerns specifically about moving things to one lane. It's very chaotic there in the morning. There's only about 7 parking spots outside the school that are allotted for us to drop off the kids. In addition, they don't let the kids go into the school till the bell rings, so a lot of us parents like to sit and make sure our kids get in safely. So my concern would be that it would be one lane and then the traffic has to slow down to 30 and people get a little huffy, especially around lunchtime. We've seen lots of things at the crosswalk that are just a little concerning. So I guess I just wanted to voice my concern about that because I normally wouldn't do that. But if anyone could speak to kind of like easing my mind a little bit about that plan and keeping the school in mind, I'd really appreciate that.
Yeah, certainly. I can try and address some of those. So certainly we have discussed one of the options being going down to a single lane and having the second lane as a parking lane. We've also, if you look at some of the drawings there, we identify the potential of 2 travel lanes and no parking along that, and I think that is also a concern for you. We've had further conversations, and this gets into a little bit more of the detail, recognizing the drop-off and pickup issue of the children in that area, and the need and ability to allow that to happen. So I think right now we're kind of at that stage of trying to identify that a bike lane is supported along 26th, and then if that is, and we're going down to 2 lanes, how do we best utilize those 2 lanes? It could even be the perspective of on certain hours there's 2 lanes of travel, and then others there's possibly parking, however restricted parking in that other lane. So we're still at a point of options, and this is exactly what we're looking back for is the feedback on those. There will be another event at the school, I believe, where is that where it's being held?
Yeah, Vincent Massey.
At the Vincent Massey School, where we'll focus a little bit more in detail on some of the options on 26th Street. So also invite you out at that time to have some further conversations. But thank you for your question.
We have been in discussion with the Brandon School Division as well, and we'll continue.
Hi, so Eva Cameron, and believe it or not, I'm not asking about affordable housing this afternoon. And I wish I would have brought the city plan, because there is talk about recreation for everyone and it being equitable, and I'm wondering with the North Hill area, we are extremely lacking there. We have no spray park. We don't really have an outdoor rink for our children and families up there. And I'm just wondering what the plan is, and if it's in your plan, as to what and how you're going to look at that to make it equitable so that our families on the North Hill area have access to that stuff too.
Perry. Yep. Thanks for that question, Eva. I'm looking back at Perry, the director of Parks, because he probably has the answer for that one. So maybe I'll have him follow up with you in a little bit with the information, but I know that is part of the discussion around the plan, is to have more of a hub type recreation facility on the North Hill. It just, he would have more information on the timing. But you're right with your comment around equity of services. That is one of the goals of the city plan, is to take a look at our different areas of the city. and try to ensure that all residents have, close as we possibly can, equitable access to amenities that make for a better life.
My name is Paul Spheropoulos, businessman of the community. I've lived in Brandon for 34 years. I love the city. I love the people. I have heard you discussing about the future and the health of our community and stuff. I haven't heard you mentioning anything about the infrastructure. Right now, our streets are in such a bad shape, it's not even funny. And I'm talking about almost every street in our community. And they are in dire need of some serious work. Number two, of course, the health of our community. I haven't heard you say how we're going to clean up our community, especially the downtown. We have an amazing downtown. It's one of the nicest downtowns probably in Western Canada, a city comparable to ours. Yet people are afraid to visit the downtown. There is a mess everywhere. We have, of course, the drug problem with needles and stuff everywhere on people's front yards, on people's stairs and everything else. I understand the whole issue of that was to have a safe place for people to go and have their problem looked after and feel safe. I don't feel it's the right thing to do to hand people out with needles so they can go and shoot themselves every which way. Why can't we have a safe site where people can just go in there, have their shot on the front of an experienced nurse or person that can make sure that they take it safely, walk away, and go about their business instead of handing them out all these needles. It has to be a better way than that. Our community, we cannot allow our community to deteriorate like that. Number two, of course, is the tax problem. Our taxes went up 9.8%, whatever it is. It's way too much. What are we getting as citizens, as taxpayers of this community for that money? You talk about the improvement of our city. I love the city. I want to see the city being improved. But please tell us what we are getting. And then it's the water bill. You talk about the city of Winnipeg. You want to compare us with the city of Winnipeg. The city of Winnipeg is trucking water from 135 miles away. We're getting it from the Assiniboine River. So how can you find justification to raise our water bill like that? And then it's the homeless situation in our community. We almost have no control. Our citizens their rights are being violated. We pay for everything, and we have no control over that. Why can't it be cleaned up? I drive downtown, and there's windows broken almost on a daily basis. Why it should be like that? We have buildings on the North Hill there by the old sanatorium. Why can't you renovate one of those buildings and get those people up there, house them, and get them off of our streets? You talk about, you came up with a bylaw that by 10 o'clock you have to clear the snow off of the sidewalks. You have to do your lawn in the summertime. Yet we keep raising the taxes. What are we getting for that? Shouldn't the mayor and the council be up there sitting right next to you today to answer these questions? Where are they today? Forgive me for this, I have not finished yet. As a mayor and council, when you sit in those chambers, making the decisions about increasing the revenue in our community and stuff, shouldn't it be a better plan than just pass it on to the taxpayers of the community? Some of us are already senior citizens. What are you trying to do? Force them out of their homes? Is that a good plan? I ask you. We live in a free country. You need to do better plans. There's ways that we can increase revenues. There's things we can do in our community. And it's worth doing that instead of passing it on to people who are already taxed to them. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments and questions. So certainly to address the condition of the infrastructure, today infrastructure is expensive, and there's no doubt our infrastructure in many parts of the city is aging. And we need to, find some means of revenue to obviously offset the demand of our infrastructure. That was one of the reasons we did commission a study with MNP to try and identify how we could become a more sustainable city. While they did address that there was a need to increase taxes, they've also identified in there that we should be looking at other revenue streams. We need to be talking to both the provincial and federal levels of government, and we do. We have discussions with them regularly. There are different grant programs where we get about $2.8 million of gas tax money that comes to the city on an annual basis. Just recently, we've received some other provincial grants for the benefit of the city. So that's that real balance between trying to maintain the infrastructure to provide the service that the citizens want, and having the revenues to be able to do that. A 9.4% tax increase is significant. There's no doubt about that. But when we look back at some of the tax increases that we've had over the previous years, we did have some ground to make up, and so I think that's what we were faced with this year. What was the other question from a utility perspective or an infrastructure? You can go with the housing if you want.
Sure.
Or the
Yeah, thanks, Mark. The other question brought up by Paul was around the downtown and safety, and some of the social challenges our community's facing. And that's unfortunate that folks are feeling unsafe downtown. And I know downtown has been a focus of our council and of staff, including the component of housing people. We're exploring multiple opportunities right now with one very close to nearing construction, a transitional housing project funded through federal, provincial land from the city, partnership to create options for people so they don't have to be on the street, and they'll have options to move into housing and move forward. We're also working, there's a project at Fleming site which is not as much focused on people experiencing homelessness, but is a site focused on providing housing options. We just recently listed a site at no charge looking for proponents to come forward to provide housing options to move us toward our goal of net zero homelessness. So we are moving forward with these discussions to fill these really important community needs. In terms of the maintenance downtown, we have hired extra crews to work on general upkeep because we know that's an issue. We've changed the way we're looking at vacant buildings because we know that's been a problem. We've changed the way we're doing community policing around increasing cadet services downtown. So although I'm not here to say all the problems are solved, in fact I don't think they ever will be, but just appreciate that these are important and they are items that are actively getting discussed and addressed every day.
I'd just like to add one more thing on the infrastructure side, and I think we recognize, and certainly a council priority and something that we're having a discussion on, is I think the revenue generator or or to reduce the impact of taxes, I think what we're looking for is to grow our industrial area and have more industrial types of development within the city. And I think that drives a lot of other different things, employment and you know, just the city as itself continuing to grow, creating a larger tax base and that type of stuff. But so one of the things that we have been challenged with by council is to try and be more successful in attracting industrial types of development, which I think will drive the city into a much healthier place.
Ward 5. I'm hoping for a concise answer to this, hopefully concise question. It was mentioned that the city plan is a provincial legislative requirement. What would the minimal boilerplate city plan look like if you just met those requirements and went no further?
That'd be pretty close to our existing document, James, the Brandon Area Planning District Development Plan that checks the basic areas that we need to check provincially.
A short follow-up. The provincial legislation that dictates this requirement.
Yeah. So it comes from the Planning Act?
Thank you.
We've just heard some information about the infrastructure, and you've addressed that well. And we can't necessarily lay all the blame for the problems with the existing council, because as you said, there was maybe some catch-up that has to happen. But my concern is that if we're going to have growth to the south in particular, we can't afford, it seems, to fix the streets we have now. So are we going to have, how can we expand the infrastructure if we can't afford to look after what we have? So that was one of my concerns. So unless we ensure that growth pays for the infrastructure. So that was my concern. My accolade that I have to Brandon, I have the luxury of being retired. And I spend more time walking than I do behind the wheel of a car than I have driving. So I really appreciate it when I can walk on a sidewalk or a path, walking path that has been cleared. And I hope that we don't go down the road of forcing all the people to clear their own sidewalks, because I know how that's going to work. You're going to have to beat a lot of people up before you get compliance. So I hope somehow we can maintain some sidewalk and pathway clearing. And as far as snow is concerned, in the plan, I only saw, of all the pictures in the plan, and there's lots of great pictures, there's only 2 pictures that show any snow, and we have snow 5 months of the year, and there was only one little comment in the plan about snow. We just need to ensure that we figure out how to deal with that too. Thanks very much.
So just quickly on the response to that. I think the first thing that we focus on as a city is that a healthy city is a growing city, right? And so that ability to expand and grow our boundaries, I think is important for the city. That's not a cheap endeavor, for sure. And one of the things that we attempt in working with the development industry is our concept of growth paying for growth. And so that is on the capital side of the infrastructure that's required. So I think our model certainly does support that, whether it's the new main infrastructure that's being built that maybe the city is undertaking, that is funded through a development cost charge program that comes out of the pockets of the developers, or any of the local infrastructure that's built within those developments is paid directly by the development community. So we think that model is fair, and we work closely with our industry to make sure that happens. But you are right, there becomes a challenge where we can't ignore the existing infrastructure that we have and the aging infrastructure that we have. And you know, we're going through a process right now which we hope puts us in a better ability to I guess manage and maintain our infrastructure. We're starting to build a really robust asset management plan, which starts looking at priorities and lifespans and investment needs, you know, not just on the capital side, but the replacement and rehabilitation side, the maintenance of that. But at the end of the day, those maintenance and operational costs do come from taxes. I don't think there's any question about that. So certainly trying to, you know, maintain a level of service that the public expects, and becoming more effective and efficient in maintaining that infrastructure that provides that service. And there's a lot that goes into that, because there's a huge demand, again, from an infrastructure perspective, and the cost aligned with that. So, you know, certainly doing what we can with the resources that we have, and it's hard to say that, you know, can we look after the new infrastructure? You know, should we have new infrastructure? But again, that comes back to, you know, a healthy city is a growing city, and I don't think we can look away from that.
Okay, I actually wasn't going to speak today, but I probably won't need a mic because I have a very loud voice and I talk pretty loud at any given time. But there's a few issues that I think we need to bring up here. Number one is, I understand we have to build stuff, but we need to fix what we have first before we start looking at putting new stuff in. We need to figure out how to do that without costing us more money, because every day in our country, not only does it cost us more money to live, it costs the city more money to operate. And you want to bring stuff in and bring people in and bring businesses in, you've got to figure out how to lower the cost of those businesses so they can lower those costs to us. It's always about how much more money can we spend, not how can we stop spending so much money and have to spend less money. I don't care if we have a bike pass on 26th Street. If you put one in and it doesn't cost a penny more, fine. But maybe before we tear up all of 26th Street and the sidewalks and everything else, maybe we should fix all the other crap first. I have no problem with expanding and growing and safety and all that stuff. I worked in mental health for years. We're not doing anything that doesn't always cost us more money. Figure out how to lower the cost to do stuff. That's what you guys need to do, so you can lower our taxes. And stop listening to people who don't. I'm a numbers guy. And I'm sorry, Mr. Barnes, but all the stuff you got up here and crap you talk about environment, you show me the science behind that and then I'll listen to you. But until you can show me the science other than flapping your gums, then I don't want to listen to you.
Yeah.
So I'm just frustrated. We all talk about all these things. Let's figure out how to stop the money from going up.
Yeah.
Good.
So,
and fix what we already
can I
have.
just do
First,
quick?
Hey, go ahead.
That's it.
Just, yeah, for sure, and and thank you for more comments. We'll address them. It's really important for these engagement sessions to just be respectful. So it's our commitment to be respectful towards the questions, because that's needed. No, just in terms of just other members who are expressing input. That's really important. So you can speak out loud as much as you want, and that's completely fine and certainly respectful, but just make sure it's towards us and not other members who are expressing different perspectives. Thanks. And Mark will jump into the answers.
And I think it would be wrong of us to not look at opportunities to improve the city. And when you use 26th Street as an example, the condition of 26th Street in that particular area is one of those streets that is in dire need of an upgrade. And if we could simply mill 50 millimeters of that surface down and replace it with another 50 millimeters of asphalt, we would do that at a much lesser cost. But that street is far gone. It needs a total reconstruction, and it gives us the opportunity to look at other levels of service that citizens require. When we went through our budget deliberations this year, you're right. Is there a way to reduce the amount of taxes that we take? Absolutely, but the unfortunate reality of it is you reduce service. You reduce the services that you provide to the city. So it's that real balance, between providing the service that the citizens expect and the revenues that we can generate.
That's not what I said to you. I spoke, you didn't hear a word come out of my mouth, you think it's something different. I said we need to reduce the cost to do everything. There's so many costs involved with any kind of construction or bringing businesses in that we don't need. There's so many hoops to jump. There's so much money spent before you turn a piece of sod over. Okay. You guys need to do it to lower that. That lowers all the costs. That means everything gets lowered for everybody all across the board. You're missing the point. Okay. It's not the money. It's it's what it costs us to get there that's wrong. Okay. We'd be spending a lot less money everywhere around if we reduce those issues.
Okay.
The city's constantly adding more onto it.
I apologize for misunderstanding, and I appreciate the clarification.
26th, I don't care about 26th Street.
Well, you were the one that brought it up as the example. Yeah. Yeah.
That's one street. We need to look after all the rest, not just 26th Street.
Absolutely.
I think we're good. Yep. Sir, thank you, sir.
Hi, Peter. Looking at the first sign here, next steps. When I first heard about the meeting, and I didn't know it was on 26th Street, etc. My first thought was potholes, and so we have a problem with snow removal as well because of budget, from what I understand. Obviously, we have a problem with budget with potholes. My understanding is that Brandon is built on a sand base. Is that correct? Okay, so because of that starting point, you're going to get contractions and etc. No matter what we do, I don't know what it would take to go down deeper and get to some harder soil to solve part of that problem. And I don't know all the way around really what we could put in our streets to make it better. Looking at things over the years, one of the things that peeves me off is we have our city workers throw some tar stuff in there, and how about you run over it, a vehicle driver, flatten it down. To me, that's a waste of my taxpayers' money in that respect. I was really glad to see just lately, though, but I think that's provincial, working on 18th. They had their their fire going, they had tar going on. It looked like a good quality job, but all the way around, we've got the area that we live in, it's going to cause problems all the way around. I was thinking about the walking spaces and the bike spaces. So far, with what we have, are we getting potholes on those walking paths, bike paths already? I don't know. I know in respects to our weather, I'm not going to bike or walk with with my winter. That I appreciate it. I've heard some generalities, and I would like to see if the industrial businesses. Do we have some? Because that's only going to. We need the business to take care of finances. So, what are some? Are there some specific things that are happening in our industrial area? If you could comment. Thank you.
You want to do maintenance, and I'll do industrial stuff.
Sure. Yeah, you're gonna go ahead. Yeah. So you're right. Our maintenance on our roadways are probably our most challenging that it's been for several years. And a big part of that is based on the freeze thaw that we've experienced, you know, probably starting back in December and going right through until the spring of this year. You're also correct that that is the province on 18th Street and their approach at patching the roadways is an excellent approach. Removing the moisture, removing the loose material, tacking, you know, the whole process that they're going through. But it's not a cheap process, I'll tell you that. It is a correct process. I think it's most effectively done probably in May and June of the year when you're not dealing with the moisture and the unstable subsurface as you're talking about. It becomes very expensive to excavate and replace a lot of those soils in which we build our roads on. I do believe, though, that roads that are designed, engineered, and built and maintained properly, there's no reason we can't maintain them for a good 30-year period, even with the soils that we have here. But I thank you for your questions and comments in that area. Ryan will probably address the industrial part.
Yeah, thanks for Mark for bringing up the industrial piece and the kind of questions from residents and trying to grow our business tax base and the successful new businesses in our community. I think it was through the Chamber of Commerce and other organizations have identified that having serviced industrial land is a limiting factor to Brandon and attracting new businesses to our community. An area of focus for us, but just like everything, costs money. The other piece that's a limiting factor there is the discussion around Manitoba hydro and electrical capacity. So we're working through these hoops and challenges to try to put forward some strategies to bring some of this new investment to our community. I am not the expert. We always sit up here, there's like 2-3 people on a panel and we're asked all these questions and we have to pretend like we're experts in everything. We're not experts in economic development, but we know it's a priority for our community and something we're working on. Thank you.
Lower their cost to get here, they'll come.
Yeah.
We're good to go? Good evening. My name is Richard Bruce. I have an editorial comment and then I have a question. Is this better? That's the first time I've been accused of that. Anyway, is that all right now? Do I got to dance with this thing? There we go. We're there. We're just slow. Anyway, if you have a decade where you have tax increases of 1% or 0, and this is purely a guess on my part, but I would think in a city with a budget of $100 million, $90 million has to be salaries, or close to that, because we don't produce anything but service. So if you do that for a decade, and in that decade, the workforce, as they should, gets economic increases that run between 2 and 3%, that means every year you're short 1 or 3%, 2% of the new growth money is going to have to be spent on salaries. Did I miss anything? Okay, so if that's the case, everybody's upset about the tax increase. I don't think if you have a tax increase at the cost of living Winnipeg, nobody's going to complain very much because that's keeping in line with everything else. But when you have a decade of no tax increase, then we get hit clipped with 9, and it's not going to get any better. And what I was hearing most people saying here, they're upset with paying that kind of money because the service isn't there. But the service wasn't there for a decade. So how long are we going to be doing this for? This plan that you're having right now, I'll quit after this because I said I'd make an editorial. This plan takes money. This plan will rise and fall on council. If council continues to behave the way it has behaved in the last decade, this will not happen no matter what we want. I'm done now. Thanks.
Hi, my name is Maureen Monroe, and just on a bit of a different vein and maybe a lighter vein, I believe that the City of Brandon, in their plan, should be thinking of putting up larger signs regarding tourism. Brandon itself, we're on a hill, got a #1 highway, you don't really see Brandon. If we're gonna attract tourism, people coming into Brandon, we need to let them know we're there. Now, I've mentioned this for a number of years at a number of meetings to a number of people. And we've got little wee signs that really didn't say a lot. They were sort of almost like stick people. And we had those at the entrance to Brandon. Very small signs we spent money on. What about small towns? They have great big things. Glenborough, a great big camel. Melita, a big banana. I don't care what it is. They gotta know Brandon's there. Yep. So we need to have these signs, and that shouldn't be put on the back burner. It's been years. I was involved in a campaign we ran about 25 years ago, and we just did it as citizens because we didn't believe that Rotary should get land at a very big discount from the city in the floodplain, right where Riverbank is. They were going to cover up Riverbank Tourism Building with Rotary in front. It has flooded many times. It was going to be 3 large buildings, underground parking for seniors. I don't know what sense that would have made. It took a big group of us to go to every community center, have people sign through the whole city, not just the North Hill, that we needed to keep that as a green space for a future of Brandon. It didn't really take a rocket science to believe you shouldn't put 3 or 4 big buildings there. But somehow city planning was approving it. And we went to community centers, we got 5,000 signatures or something, and Rotary eventually backed down. They didn't want to be known as bad guys in the city. But, you know, sometimes it is hard to see the decisions that are made. We had another big issue, 18th Street, at the top of the hill in Braycrest. They were going to do it 8 or 10 units down in our ditch as we came off 18th Street. We can't even keep the traffic at a controllable speed. I saw a big accident there the other day. But it's, you know, we always get turned away from that corner. They're not going to do anything. We finally got a sign after I had spent a lot of work and neighbors to get a sign to reduce the speed, like your speed is. That was apparently too expensive for up there. There's been a lady that died there a few years back. But we can't have anything there. I asked, can the city or the province, because we seem to be in a spot where traffic is either blamed on the city or the province there. And I said, can we not get the speed down to 60? Just change the sign. Instead of 70, 60. No, we can't seem to get that. Like, these things are infuriating, I must say. They're very infuriating. So I would like the city to look at some things. I think that it's been a great development at the Riverbank. I think we need to let people know what they're coming into Brandon for and have some of those amenities so people want to come to Brandon. Yeah. Medicine Hat, no, I shouldn't say Medicine Hat, I'm trying to say, forgetting the name of the town, Moose Jaw. Have wonderful things. People go to Moose Jaw for the hot spring, the mineral spas, the museums. They go to a small community like that. And what do we have to show tourism here? So let's get on that part of the ballpark too. Thank you very much.
Water park.
Any of you guys want to respond to that?
Sure.
The Riverbank's a great place to be. I'm glad it's open space for a community. I'm on the board, and that was a really important piece of infrastructure. So creating places for people is a big part of building the community. So thank you for your comments.
I'm Devin Ross, and I've just got a couple of questions about this. I wrote about the city plan on the weekend, and I encouraged people to read it. So if I could just have a show of hands, how many people have actually read this document?
I read the whole thing.
And how many found it to be an easy read? Okay, so I think we have a lot of grievances here tonight about issues that only tangentially have anything to do with the city plan, but I'd like to ask you a question about the city plan because I think it's an important issue that we shouldn't lose this opportunity to talk about before this goes to implementation. And the question is this:
on page 20, and I wrote about this, on page 20 of this document, it includes the plan to ensure inclusionary zoning in all neighborhoods and promote the establishment of affordable housing units and universally acceptable housing units be included as part of new multi-unit developments. And my understanding, and this was in the news report, Sonikila, after you spoke to council, is that that means that residential single detached and residential low density zoning would be merged into a single category, with residential low density areas modified to allow for the construction of fourplexes. Now, we're seeing this in Calgary and a number of other cities across the country. This is very controversial. And I think it's fair to the people in this room and to the people in this city to understand what that proposal means and the practical impact of it. Because, as I said, in Calgary right now, the view is, and I'm really surprised it's become so antagonistic so quickly there, the view is that if you're living, for example, here in Brandon in Waverly and someone wants to build a fourplex on the lot beside you, there's nothing you can say about that. And I think the people in this room need to understand whether that's the subject of this plan or not.
I agree with you.
Yes. So we received, I guess just to give a little bit of a history of where some of those changes are coming from, we are receiving funding from the federal government that one of the reasons, the main reason really, is to increase housing supply. One of the main best practices is to end exclusionary zoning. So what that means is zoning areas, so an example in our city is some areas are only zones that they only permit single detached housing. So you can understand that that is in itself exclusionary. And so we're exploring what our responsibility is with the tools that we can modify, such as a zoning bylaw, to have more inclusionary zoning. We understand also that there's some considerations to be had with infill, right? So your example about, a fourplex coming in, and so maybe there's some considerations around setbacks and different things like that. We are proposing some criteria with some of the intensification proposals. There's different scenarios. If you read that report, you probably saw that, sort of one of them is a combination of that RLD and RSD. The other one is maybe an RSD that's more permissive, like more inclusive, has a few more options, rather than just only permitting a single detached house in a city where we're seeing only 20 single detached houses developed in the last year, and then like 190 something, I think, I'm forgetting the numbers here, for multi-unit. So we can see that there is a demand and a need for various kinds of housing. However, our zoning can be very restrictive. And so that's what that is about, is to provide more options. And just to emphasize that council still has to make the decision on where we're landing, and it's good to have these conversations. Some of this information is online. You're right, people should be aware of what the changes are and be able to have a say.
Yep, for sure.
Hi, I'm Madeline Robinson, and I just want to say that I think the plan is very inclusive, and I'm very impressed with that. I think we're creating a more just and equal society. I think it's great if I can have neighbors who are not like me, so that I can learn from them and be a better person myself and a better neighbor. Mainly, I want to talk, though, about my excitement about dedicated bike paths on 26th Street. I live not far off of 26th Street. Prior to, back in my youth, I was an avid cyclist, and I was very excited about moving to Brandon, thinking, I'm going to be able to cycle again. But I found that when I got here, and lots of different reasons why, but I don't feel safe. And so dedicated bike path will be the answer, and it will give me ways to connect to the services that I need, so that I can leave my car in the driveway or someday give my car up. And every time that I use my bike rather than drive a car, that means there's less traffic noise, there's less air pollution, there's less stress on our healthcare because I'm healthier and more fit. It just makes for a better world. And I say kudos to that bike path. Thank you.
My name is Layla Prasnik. My pronouns are she and they. And I was involved with the, through the early stages with this city plan through the first consultation meetings that happened, I think, in May. It might have been last year, 2 years ago. I kind of forget at this point. But I read through the city plan, and I'm actually quite enthused to see a lot of the stuff that's in it. I've long been a proponent of more inclusionary zoning and the abolition of single-family zoning. I think it's a great piece to have to increase our housing stock, especially in a city where rental availability has been historically low, and that's had an effect on driving up rents. I prefer not to use my car as well. I know some people who can't use a car or don't have a car. So to de-emphasize car centricity in this city is a great thing to see as well, to provide more infrastructure and pay more attention to infrastructure for pedestrians, for cyclists, for people who take transit. So I just want to say big fan of a lot of the stuff that I've seen in the plan so far, and I'm excited.
Hello, my name is Charlene. I don't normally speak in front of people like this, but I feel, where is the inclusion with what our infrastructure is right now? I live in the East End. Our sidewalks are like this. Over years of tree roots. Where's the inclusion there? I feel when we have issues like this, where's a referendum? Why can we not have a referendum to vote? Who's making these decisions? Our council needs to realize that you represent us. You don't govern us. Thank you.
I'm going to try and make it quick before Ron gets me again. You know what, I noticed that last couple people that came up and spoke, and you guys said some really key things that I kind of wanted to hone in on. You said that you realize that our roads need work. We don't have the funds for do it. We're probably going to have to increase our taxes, right? As she just said, we have sidewalks that aren't walkable. I get what you're talking about. You want us to walk, but we have sidewalks, and you can't walk on them. So I don't understand. So we're not making walking paths here for recreation. Again, we have to remember, we have to go back to what this is really about. The bike paths are for people to get to work easily, right? Can you answer that? That's what the paths are for? Okay. So the only time that we're going to be potentially using it is during working hours. If that's what your ideal is. If people want to go recreational biking, we have tons of recreational paths to go recreational biking. You need it to get to and from work? How many people are going to use it? What is the return on investment? What is the return on, what do you see as a goal that this is supposed to improve anybody but cost us money? That's it.
The only correction I would make to that, Rick, is I don't think it's just people commuting to work. I think that other people have identified they would use paths to access services which are also downtown.
But I want to clarify the reasoning behind your bike paths, because obviously they should be referred to as walking paths because we have sidewalks. Right. I should assume that. So technically, the only thing that we are spending money here on, the one thing is specifically for bicycles, not for pedestrians. And the way that you're showing what these are for, because we already have over 100 kilometers of recreational bike paths in Brandon. So you are looking at making more bike paths for the purpose of people to be able to travel to and from work. And I know that what I would like to see, and if you could entertain me, the city could entertain me, if everybody in the city for one whole year walks and bikes to work, have at it and build a hats everywhere. But until I see every city councillor walking and biking to work, showing me hats, it makes no sense. You gotta practice what you preach at the end of the day. Thank you.
Hi, back again. Just short. I was wondering, in your single-family dwelling zone, do you not allow duplexes?
You can apply Terry Knowles planning, so there's a conditional use that you can apply.
Okay, what about a fourplex? Couldn't it become a conditional use as well? Because the point I'm getting at is, say you buy a house. You're a working class fellow, you buy a house, and if there's no restriction on what goes next to you, you've paid $300,000 for your house, and right next to you, with no conditions on it, a fourplex can be developed. That's what you're aiming at right now. So, do you think that's going to be good for the city, or do you think people are going to invest when they see a situation that loosey-goosey? Anyway, just wondering, because there are issues there. Thank you.
I think, Terry, part of the research that goes into providing more flexibility around use types, like duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes, is the discussion around built form standards. Because that's often the concern that we get from residents is it's not as much as the amount of units next door, it's the size of the building and the impact it has on things like privacy and sunlight. And does it look like it fits? So those are some of those items that we have been looking at, and some of the other communities that are going through similar processes are also looking at.
If you've made a 30-foot wide lot now the standard, how is that going to be available for a fourplex without making it a very congested situation?
Yeah, fair point. And all parcels certainly are not the right size for that amount of density. So I hear what you're saying. Thank you.
You got no way of stopping it though in the future, other than maybe appealing to somebody's good intentions. The zoning is leaving the city. Now, the federal government is asking you to do this change to have inclusiveness. That I heard about just a little while ago by a minister who's just appointed as the housing minister. Do you think he knows what he's doing? I mean, this is a little strange. This is down in, he comes from Nova Scotia or someplace down there. And it just seems to me that every community across the country has to fall into that mold now, which might be good for him down there in Nova Scotia, but doesn't always appeal to the people who live on the prairies or elsewhere in the country. So I'm just wondering, are you taking this for granted, that it's the end-all and be-all? I know that the grants are attached to it, but isn't that, what do you call that? It's, bribery, exactly.
So maybe we'll move on. There's one more fellow behind you. I think people are starting to get a little restless here. And by all means, I mean, I'm sure Ryan would love to have a conversation with you over on the side there, but maybe we'll take this one more gentleman, have his question, and then not to rush out of here, but we'll certainly be around. We can have some more one-on-one conversations with people and that type of stuff. So if you don't mind, the gentleman behind you can use the mic, and then we'll move on from there. Thank you very much.
We're going to do 2 presentations today.
Hi. You guys probably know me from the Park Community Center board at the meetings last year, but I'm not here to talk about that today. That's something for you and Eldon to discuss at a later date.
Fair enough.
Anyway, about this snow clearing thing, a few weeks ago when we got the big snowfall there on March 3rd, I went out on the Monday and I cleaned the sidewalk there on Rosser and in front of my house there, only to have the city come by the next day and bury it again. And it was quite deep. So I just said, you know what, I ain't doing this again. And I work 12-hour shifts. I work out in Carberry. I get up in the morning at 6 in the morning, I work 12 hours unloading trucks and shoveling up dirt and potatoes. When I get home at 9, 10 o'clock at night, I'm in no mood to be shoveling snow. So I know that the counselor there, Bruce Lebucki, brought up this thing about finding people and stuff like that, you know, because you have to have the snow cleared. Well, if I'm working shift work and I'm there on my 3 days, I don't really have the time to do that. So I'm hoping in the future you guys don't find me for that. Anyway, that's my one gripe there. Another question I have to ask is, a few years ago, a good friend of mine, he passed away, and he lived in the East End. Now, this property that he owns in the East End, it's a little off the beaten path. It's just down off of Rosser a little bit. And when his family is looking after the estate, and I asked the family, well, what's happening to his house? They said the city of Brandon will not allow them to sell the property because they do not wish to service that area anymore. There's still a house right beside it that is a rental property. It's still being serviced. And you guys are talking about expansion and all this kind of stuff. Well, here's a piece of property that you could build something on it, just you guys do not wish to service the area. So I'm not sure where the family stands with it. I'm kind of out of that situation now with them. Again, when you're clearing up estates and stuff, land, houses, that's all part of your assets when dealing with wills, is it not? So how can you tell this family that they can't sell this property and try to settle the estate at the same time? And I mean, I'm just, you know, it's a little off the beaten path, and I know in Brandon there's a few houses that are not on the main drag. There's a few that come to mind right now. Are you going to tell some other family down the road that you can't sell this property because we're not going to service it anymore? Yet you're willing to spend how many millions to service an area south of town where there's no guarantees these people are going to buy houses from Jacobson and Griner, right? There's no guarantee. That's just all out there. But you're going to have an established house where there is infrastructure, and you're going to tell people, well, you can't sell it because we don't want to service it anymore. But we're going to service an area that there ain't no houses being built there. Does that make any sense to you?
It's a very specific example.
So perhaps instead of trying to kind of guess the scenario, like there's a planner over by the Grove. Andrew, can you raise your hand? So maybe go talk to Andrew once you're, and then he can try to understand your scenario. Because we do have a couple scenarios around town where some areas are getting built and then they're not, and different rules. So
yeah, I mean, the thing is, there's already a sewer and thing already to this place.
Yep.
And I mean, the house isn't in the greatest of shape. So, I mean, but you could be torn down and a duplex or something could be built in that neck of the woods.
yeah, kind of, once again, maybe best for you just to go chat with Andrew about that, because I would just be making stuff up here because I don't have the background just yet.
Okay, I thought I'd bring that up.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. So I don't know if Sonny Keeley has any closing remarks for this session. I think we had planned on doing another presentation in and around 7, but I don't know if there's value in doing that, if there's not really a new crowd coming through. But we can certainly discuss about doing another presentation. We will also be around here for probably at least another hour, and we can have further one-on-one discussions with you if you so choose, and if there's enough, we can certainly go through another presentation at 7 o'clock. So for now, we're going to take a break up here, and we'll be happy to answer any questions that folks might have.